Hey everyone, if you're watching this video, means you got my email. Thanks for doing some work for Greek over the summer. I'm gonna share my screen so you can see what I see. Don't get started. All right, so as I mentioned in the email I sent you, the goal for the summer will be for you to become proficient in pronunciation. Pronunciation is being able to recognize the sounds the words, the letters make, and be able to correctly pronounce the letters when they're in a word. So I'll talk through that a little bit more, but that's the goal. It's important because the letters we're learning for Greek are different than English, different characters, different sounds. One of the challenges for learning Greek is the pronunciation piece. And the quicker you can pronounce and the more efficient and confidently you can pronounce these words, much easier it will be in your Greek journey in the fall. So do yourself, future self a favor and start working on pronunciation. So I've sent you some chapters. Chapter 1 focuses primarily on the alphabet, getting familiar with Greek characters and the sounds they make. I do encourage you, even as you're watching the video, to read all, actually, what do I do? Sorry, let me get a little highlighter here. Maybe this will work. That could work better than the cursor. So you can see. So please read the information I've provided. I've tried to be concise, but sometimes in learning a language, there's a lot of questions I'm also trying to anticipate too. So that can be tricky. So, oh, that didn't work. Sorry, you're seeing my problems with technology. So most of you are familiar with it from class. All right. So a couple things just I'll highlight before I get into it. When you see a line over the O's in what follows, you'll pronounce that with the long O sound. So that line over the O means O. Line over the E says A. The E will have an A sound, which is not an English thing, but it's connected to a Greek thing. And you'll see that below. So there's a few other things in footnotes I help give you for pronunciation. For example, whenever you see the letter A in these letter names for Greek, you'll use the ah sound, like in the word father, ah. And so keep those in mind. So first thing you're going to do is learn the names of the Greek letters. So here you have the lowercase letter. Here you have next to it the uppercase letter. The first column tells you the kind of in English letters how you would pronounce this Greek letter name, and then followed by the same word but in the Greek language. So here you have alpha, alpha, alpha. So that A-looking letter is an alpha, and it's going to be pronounced with an ah sound. I'll explain that in just a moment. Beta, beta, gamma, see capital gamma, lowercase gamma, capital gamma, delta, delta, epsilon, so it looks like an E in English is an epsilon in Greek. It has that short E sound in English, epsilon. Zeta, 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 or zeta. It's probably better to do it fast. Ending zeta, which looks like a Z. Here you have another vowel, which I'll talk about later, in eta, eta. That has the capital looking H, but it's not an H, it's a Greek eta. Theta, iota, kappa, lambda, lambda, mu, nu. There's a very strange looking letter. It's an Xi. It's like an X sound. Xi. Omicron. This is nice because it looks like our English O, and it has that short English O sound, ah, Omicron. P, more modern pronunciations, you'll see that as a pi, but for the pronunciation we're using, it's a P. The iota in Greek makes an E sound, so P. Rho, so what looks like a P in English is an R sound, a rho, it's a rho, so Sigma, I'll talk about this. Sigma has two forms in lowercase. Tau, like a T, tau, upsilon, upsilon, phi. So this character is phi, phi. And by the way, it's not chi here. Maybe I need to fix. Oh, maybe you can figure out because the parallel here is lock. So the sound the letter makes is so when you see it here, it's not chi, it's phi. Actually, I should have started with that. The second column, by the way, has like the way that trying to help you identify the sound the letter makes. So upsilon is like the oo in food, upsilon, food. Tau is like tip or sigma, sit. So sometimes it's pretty straightforward. When you get down here, you got these single letters in Greek that are like a compound letter in English or a compound sound. Like a PH makes a F sound or sound. So that's phi, phi. Then here you have this one here. It's pronounced ps, ps. So the letter itself is called psi, psi. It makes the ps sound. It's hard to do by itself. It's a PS sound. Usually we would need to have some other characters for us to communicate that, like C. And you'll see that later on, how it works out. And then you have omega, the long O sound, like in the word tone. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier, but the second column contains the sound the letter makes, like an English parallel to help you see. Okay. So practice going through and pronouncing the letter names. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Okay, just do that. You're gonna have to do that multiple times until you can say it in order. Then the next thing, or maybe actually as you're memorizing the letter names, you'll want to practice writing these letters. You'll need to be familiar with being able to write them so that as the textbook goes along, it's a workbook. You're going to do quite a bit of writing in Greek because when you write and when you speak, it helps you to remember better. It's the various neurons that are going to be firing as you learn this Greek language. You need as much help as you can get, so the more senses you can put together, touching, seeing, and hearing, like that's all going to help your memory and help things to stick. So I just have you practice writing the lowercase letters. Those are the main ones you need to know how to write and write well. So here, let me see if I can do it. This is not going to look very good, but we'll write the alpha below that dotted line there. The beta come a little bit above. Can't do it. You can just make it look like a B, but it's got that little stem. The gamma looks like a Y in English. So the lowercase, most of them will be below that dotted line, but then sometimes they have a little thing that will go above it. So obviously with my system here, I'm using a mouse. I can't really write it very well. But do your best to practice writing. You're not going to be graded on how well you write these things. So, but it's to help your memory. So as long as you're consistent and over time you get comfortable being able to write, that's totally fine. Okay, so pronunciation and writing are key right now. Now I need to erase that. Okay. So if you've kept with me this far, not laughing too much at my mistakes, that's fine if you want. Then we'll move on. Don't forget, read footnotes. They'll help clarify some things as you go. Keep working on pronunciation. Now, the next section, I give you a little more explanation about the letters of the Greek alphabet. The number 24, 17 consonants, 17 vowels. You'll need to be familiar with the ones that are vowels because they function a little bit differently. So practice writing alpha, epsilon, eta, omicron. I'm sorry, iota, omicron, upsilon, omega a few times just to help your brain start to identify which 7 are vowels. And I talk about long and short vowels here. You'll want to read that. But I also mentioned just be familiar with those terms. You don't need to know too much about it yet. The sigma, I mentioned this above, has 2 forms. You see it here. You want to practice writing both and be familiar with both. This first one, should go back to my cool. This first one here is when the sigma occurs at the beginning of the word or the middle of the word. That's when you'll see this kind of looking like an omicron with a line over it. Oh, English O with a line over it. And then you got this more S-looking character, which is only when it's the last letter of the word. So if the sigma is the last letter in the word, that's what you'll see there, is that form. And that's what I talk about there. The iota has 2 different sounds it can make. It can make the E sound, that's the most common, but it can also make more of a short I sound in English, like it, it. And that happens when the iota is followed by a consonant. So when the next letter in the word is a consonant, you'll use the short I sound for that iota, the is sound. And as I go through things, I'll help you see that. And then, yeah, read this here. This is important because it's a mistake I made when I first started learning Greek. So it maybe can help you avoid some of those mistakes. All right, so as you get to this section, practice writing it again. So as you should be able at this point, before you keep moving on, and I'll stop the video in just a second, say the letter names, alpha, beta, gamma, do it in order, and then be able to write the letters. Get very familiar with them. It's going to take multiple times, multiple days. You can't cram language learning, so you got to do it multiple times, multiple days. Consistency is key for learning a language. All right, that's the first video, 1A or chapter 1A. And hopefully you'll be motivated to eventually start the next video. See you there.